Marcus Harrison had not heard his son laugh like that in 847 days. He had counted every single one. The sound stopped him cold in the marble hallway of his Paradise Valley mansion. His briefcase still in hand, his mind still churning through the Anderson merger that had consumed his morning. It was 3:15 on a Tuesday afternoon. He was never home at 3:15. He was never home before 7, sometimes 8. Occasionally not until Tommy was already asleep in his specialized bed with the rails that kept him from rolling onto his weak legs during the night. But today the CFO had called in sick, and the afternoon presentations had been cancelled, and Marcus had driven home through the Phoenix heat without really deciding to his Mercedes, navigating the familiar route on autopilot, while his thoughts stayed locked on profit margins and stock valuations and all the numbers that made sense in ways his life no longer did. The laughter came again, pure and unfiltered and so startlingly genuine that Marcus felt something twist in his chest. Something he had not felt in so long he almost did not recognize it. Hope. Or maybe just the memory of hope, like the phantom pain from a limb long since amputated. He moved toward Tommy's bedroom, his Italian leather shoes silent on the travertine floors that Sophia had insisted on during the renovation 3 years ago, back when they still talked about things like tile patterns and cabinet hardware, back before their conversations had narrowed to medical appointments and therapy schedules, and the careful dance of two people living in the same house but inhabiting completely different worlds. The door was half open. Marcus stopped just outside, something instinctive making him pause, making him look rather than announce himself. What he saw made his blood turn to ice water in his veins. Maya Torres, the housekeeper. They had hired 6 months ago, when the previous woman had quit without explanation, was kneeling on the floor beside Tommy. That alone was not shocking. Maya often spent time with Tommy, more time than was strictly necessary for someone whose job description involved laundry and meal preparation and keeping the 7,000 square foot house clean enough to match Sophia's exacting standards. But this was different. Maya's hands, those brown calloused hands that Marcus had barely noticed in 6 months of passing her in hallways and kitchens, were wrapped around Tommy's small leg. She was moving it slowly, carefully, in a rotation that Marcus recognized instantly, because he had paid Dr. Patricia Frost $500 an hour to do the exact same motion every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 18 months. Except Maya was doing it better. Her fingers pressed into specific points along Tommy's calf with practiced precision. She adjusted the angle of his knee to exactly 45 degrees. She hummed something soft and melodic in Spanish, while Tommy giggled. Actually giggled, his face bright with joy, instead of the resigned endurance he showed during his sessions with Dr. Frost. "Come on, little warrior," Maya murmured, her accent wrapping around the English words like warm honey. "You can lift this leg by yourself. Remember what we talked about yesterday. You are stronger than you think you are." Tommy's face crunched up in concentration, his small body tensed, and then impossibly his leg rose 3 inches off the floor without Maya's support. 3 inches. Tommy had not managed that in 6 months of professional therapy. The boy's eyes went wide with wonder and pride. Maya clapped her hands together, her face radiant with genuine delight. "Yes, yes, Tommy, you see what you can do." Marcus stood frozen in the hallway, his mind trying to process what he was witnessing. A tornado of emotions ripped through him so violently he had to put his hand against the wall to steady himself. Anger came first, hot and immediate. This woman, this housekeeper with no medical training, no credentials, no right whatsoever, was performing physical therapy on his son without permission, without supervision, without any of the protocols that Marcus had spent tens of thousands of dollars establishing. But underneath the anger was something more complicated. Confusion because Tommy was clearly progressing under Maya's care in ways he had not progressed with Dr. Frost. Shame because in 6 months, Marcus had not once sat on the floor with his son, like this, had not once tried to help with the exercises, had not once been present for anything beyond signing checks and reviewing medical reports. And threading through it all was a question that made his throat tight. How did a housekeeper know advanced physical therapy techniques? "Mr. Harrison?" Sophia's voice behind him was quiet but not surprised. Marcus turned to find his wife standing in the hallway, a cup of tea in her hands, her expression carefully neutral in that way she had perfected over the past 2 years. "You're home early," she said. "You knew about this." It was not a question. Sophia glanced toward Tommy's room, where Maya was now helping the boy stand, supporting him gently while he found his balance. "I noticed some things, yes." "Some things." Marcus heard his voice rising and forced it back down. "She's performing medical procedures on our son, Sophia. She's helping him." Sophia's green eyes met his, and there was something defiant in them, something he had not seen in a long time. "Look at him, Marcus. Really look at him. When was the last time you saw Tommy that happy?" The words hit like a physical blow. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to assert his authority, wanted to be right about something, anything in a life that had slowly spiraled beyond his control ever since the doctor had used the words cerebral palsy and Tommy's future had narrowed from infinite possibility to careful management of limited expectations. But he could not argue with what he had just witnessed. Inside the room, Tommy was taking small shuffling steps, while Maya supported him under his arms. Her voice a constant stream of encouragement and praise, her movements so practiced and professional that it made Marcus's jaw clench. "How long?" he asked. 3 months, maybe 4. I didn't ask for details." 3 months. Marcus turned away from the door, his mind racing. She could hurt him. She could cause permanent damage. She could give him back something no expensive doctor has managed to provide. Sophia interrupted. "Joy, Marcus. She's giving him joy." They stood in silence for a long moment, the sound of Tommy's laughter filtering through the half-open door like an accusation. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice low and hard. "I need to think about this." He walked to his study, shut the door, and stood at the window overlooking the perfectly manicured backyard with its saltwater pool and outdoor kitchen and all the expensive amenities that were supposed to make life better, but somehow just made the emptiness more obvious. His hands were shaking. That night, Marcus lay awake long after Sophia had fallen into her practice sleep on the far side of their California king bed. The house was silent, except for the whisper of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of expensive wood settling. He kept seeing Maya's hands on Tommy's leg, kept hearing his son's laughter, kept feeling the knife twist of recognition that a housekeeper had achieved in months what he had failed to provide in years. Connection, progress, hope. At 2 in the morning, he gave up on sleep and went to his home office. He pulled up the personnel file on Maya Torres. It was surprisingly thin. Age 32. Address in South Phoenix. Previous employment at 2 other households, both references satisfactory but not enthusiastic. No red flags, but nothing particularly notable either. Nothing that explained her skills. Marcus opened his laptop and began researching. Physical therapy techniques for cerebral palsy, trigger point manipulation, range of motion exercises. The medical terminology felt foreign on his tongue, even as he read it silently, a reminder of all the appointments he had missed, all the reports he had paid other people to read and summarize for him. By 4 in the morning, he had made a decision. He would confront Maya directly. He would get answers. He would determine whether she was helping or harming his son. And if necessary, he would terminate her employment immediately, whatever Sophia's objections. But even as he made these plans, some part of him knew that the real source of his anger had nothing to do with protocols or credentials or medical best practices. The real source was simple and devastating. Maya had succeeded where he had failed. She had reached Tommy in ways Marcus no longer knew how to do. She had brought light back into his son's eyes while Marcus had been locked away in his office, hiding from his own inadequacy behind walls of work and walls of money and walls of carefully maintained emotional distance. The next morning, Marcus left for the office at his usual time but turned the car around after 2 blocks. He arrived back at the house at 9:30 when he knew Sophia would be at her design studio and Tommy would be having his morning snack. He found Maya in the kitchen cutting apple slices into small, precise pieces, arranging them on a plate in a pattern that would make Tommy smile. She looked up when he entered, and he saw the flash of nervousness in her dark eyes. She knew she had been discovered. "Mr. Harrison, I did not expect you home. I need to talk to you," Marcus said, his voice carefully controlled. "About what I saw yesterday in Tommy's room." Maya's hands stilled on the cutting board. The knife trembled slightly. She set it down with careful deliberation and turned to face him fully, her spine straight despite the fear he could see in the tightness around her mouth. "I can explain, sir." "Explain what?" "That you're playing doctor with my 5-year-old son, that you're performing medical procedures without any training or authorization." The words came out harsher than he intended, sharpened by his own guilt and confusion. Maya flinched, but did not look away. "I would never hurt Tommy, Mr. Harrison. Never." "That's not the point. You don't have the right to make medical decisions about him. You're not qualified. You're just—" He stopped himself, but not quickly enough. "A housekeeper," Maya finished quietly. "Yes, sir. I am just a housekeeper." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with implications Marcus did not want to examine. He cleared his throat. "Where did you learn those techniques, the exercises you were doing with Tommy?" Maya's hands twisted together in front of her, a gesture of nervous energy that seemed at odds with the competence he had witnessed the day before. For a long moment she did not answer. Marcus could see the internal debate playing across her face. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "My younger brother Carlos. He was born with problems similar to Tommy's. Cerebral palsy, mild but significant. My family, we did not have money for expensive therapists or special equipment. So I learned. I watched through clinic windows. I borrowed books from the library. I found videos online. I took care of Carlos for 12 years, sir. Every day, every exercise, every small victory." She lifted her gaze to meet his, and Marcus saw something fierce burning there, something that made him take an involuntary step back. "My brother walks now, Mr. Harrison. He runs. He plays soccer for his high school team. The doctors said it was impossible. They said Carlos would never walk normally, never be like other children. But they were wrong. They were wrong because they did not believe. They did not see what was possible. They only saw limitations." The words hit Marcus like a series of small explosions. This woman, this housekeeper he had barely noticed in 6 months, had achieved a miracle through nothing but determination and love, while he, with all his wealth and connections, had accomplished nothing but emotional withdrawal and guilty checks written to expensive specialists. "You had no right," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "You should have asked permission. You should have told me." "Would you have said yes, sir?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable. They both knew the truth. At that moment, Tommy appeared in the kitchen doorway, moving carefully on his crutches, his face lighting up when he saw Maya. "Miss Maya, can we do the exercises now? I want to show you how strong my leg is getting." Then he noticed his father, and the smile faltered, replaced by a careful wariness that made Marcus's heart crack. His own son was nervous around him. His own son, had to put on a mask of good behavior instead of showing genuine joy. "Tommy, go back to your room," Marcus said. "The adults are talking." The light went out of Tommy's eyes instantly. He nodded, turned, and made his slow way back down the hall, the soft thump of his crutches like tiny hammers driving nails into Marcus's conscience. Maya watched him go, her expression anguished. When she turned back to Marcus, there was new determination in her face. "Mr. Harrison, I know you see me as just a housekeeper. Maybe that is all I am. But your son is improving. You saw it yourself. You cannot deny it." "Improving?" Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Based on what? A few minutes of observation. Based on 6 months of daily work," Maya said, her voice gaining strength. 6 months of tears and triumphs and slow, careful progress. I see Tommy crying when he thinks no one is watching. I see him trying so hard to make the expensive therapists happy, pushing himself until he hurts. I see a smart, brave boy who just needs someone to believe in him without reservation or doubt. Each word was an indictment. Each sentence stripped away another layer of Marcus's carefully constructed defenses. He wanted to argue, wanted to reassert his authority, wanted to be right. But standing in his enormous kitchen with its marble countertops and professional-grade appliances, facing this woman who earned probably 1/10 of what he spent on Tommy's medical care each month, he felt something shift inside him. "My methods may not be as scientific as the professionals," Maya continued, "but they are done with real love. And sometimes, Mr. Harrison, sometimes that makes all the difference." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. What could he say? That love was not enough, that credentials mattered more than results, that money could buy what Maya had given freely. He turned and walked out of the kitchen without another word, his mind churning with questions he did not want to answer and truths he was not ready to face. But he did not fire her. Not that day, not that week. And in that single act of restraint, everything began to change. Marcus Harrison had spent 20 years building an empire based on one fundamental principle: knowledge was power. Information, data, facts. These were the tools that separated winners from losers in the world of high-stakes finance. So when Maya Torres walked out of his kitchen that morning, leaving him with more questions than answers, Marcus did what he always did when facing an unknown variable. He investigated. The security company arrived on Thursday. Professional, discreet, exactly the kind of operation that catered to Paradise Valley residents who valued their privacy. Marcus told Sophia it was a routine upgrade, an enhanced system to protect Tommy. She had looked at him with those knowing green eyes but said nothing. They had become experts at not saying things. By Friday evening, 8 new cameras had been installed throughout the house. High-definition motion, activated cloud storage. The technician assured Marcus he could monitor everything from his phone, his laptop, anywhere with an internet connection. "For your son's safety," the man had said, not knowing he was providing tools for something else entirely. Surveillance, investigation, the careful documentation of a mystery Marcus needed to solve. That first night, Marcus sat in his study until well past midnight, watching recorded footage on his laptop. Maya arrived at the house each morning at 7. That was her scheduled start time. But the timestamp on the camera showed her entering through the service entrance at 6:03 a.m., an hour early, every single day. Marcus fast-forwarded through the week's recordings. Monday 6:01, Tuesday 6:04, Wednesday 5:58. Always early, never logging the extra time, never asking for additional compensation. He watched as she moved through the house in those early morning hours, not cleaning, not preparing breakfast. Instead, she went directly to Tommy's room, where she spent 45 minutes performing exercises with him, before his official wake-up time at 7:30. Gentle stretches, careful manipulations, soft encouragement in that melodic Spanish-accented English that seemed to wrap around Tommy like a warm blanket. The boy responded to her with a trust and openness that made Marcus's chest hurt. This was his son, but watching through the cold lens of a security camera, Marcus felt like an outsider peering into someone else's life, a voyeur in his own home. He kept watching. The footage showed Maya's routine with clinical precision. After the morning exercises, she prepared Tommy's breakfast. Not the simple meals outlined in her job description, but carefully balanced plates that Marcus recognized from the dietary recommendations Dr. Frost had provided. Foods that supported muscle development. Portions that matched Tommy's nutritional needs exactly. How did a housekeeper know these things? The question gnawed at him. Maya moved through her duties with practiced efficiency, but Marcus began to notice the small details he had missed in 6 months of barely seeing her. The way she positioned Tommy's chair to encourage better posture. The strategic placement of his favorite toys to make him stretch and reach. The constant subtle therapy embedded into every moment of his day. She had turned Tommy's entire existence into a rehabilitation program, and she had done it so seamlessly that no one had noticed. Marcus found himself watching footage from 3 months ago when Maya had first started. Back then, Tommy had been more withdrawn, more dependent on his crutches, more resigned to his limitations. The change had been so gradual that Marcus had not registered it. But seeing the progression compressed into time-lapse video, the transformation was undeniable. Tommy was improving, significantly, measurably, and Marcus had been too buried in work, too consumed by his own guilt and avoidance to notice any of it. On the recordings, he heard his own voice occasionally clipped commands and absent-minded responses when Tommy tried to show him something. He heard Sophia's patient encouragement, the way she filled the space Marcus left empty. And he heard Maya, her voice, a constant presence in Tommy's world, believing in him with a conviction that felt almost religious. At 1:47 a.m., Marcus finally closed the laptop. His eyes burned, his head throbbed, but he had made a decision. He would follow Maya. He would discover where this mysterious knowledge came from, what drove her to sacrifice so much for a child who was not her own. He would find the truth, whatever it was. Friday evening arrived with the kind of October heat that made Phoenix feel like the surface of the sun. Marcus told Sophia he had a dinner meeting with potential investors. She accepted the lie with the same careful neutrality she applied to most things these days. He left the house at 6:30, drove 2 blocks, then parked in a shopping center lot with a clear view of the street. At 7:12, Maya emerged from the house and walked to the bus stop on the corner. Marcus waited until the bus arrived, then followed in his Mercedes, keeping several car lengths back. The bus wound through Paradise Valley, then descended into the neighborhoods where the houses got smaller and the yards less manicured. Scottsdale gave way to Phoenix proper, then to the areas that real estate agents carefully avoided mentioning. South Phoenix, working class. The places where people like Marcus never went unless they were lost. Maya got off at a busy intersection where a taco truck competed with a discount grocery store for customers. She walked 3 more blocks, her purse clutched close, her head down. Marcus followed on foot now, his expensive suit jacket abandoned in the car, feeling conspicuous despite the gathering darkness. The house was small and tired-looking. Peeling paint, a chain-link fence missing several sections, and oleander bush that had grown wild and scraggly. But the porch light was on, warm and welcoming, and as Marcus watched from across the street, the front door opened and a teenage boy came bounding out. Carlos. It had to be. The boy wore a red and white soccer uniform number 10 on his back. He moved with the restless energy of a 15-year-old, but Marcus could see it now, the slight hitch in his gait, the way his right leg swung just a fraction differently than his left. Evidence of cerebral palsy, subtle but present. Carlos grabbed Maya in a fierce hug that lifted her off her feet. She laughed, the sound carrying across the street, and Marcus realized he had never heard her laugh like that. Open, unguarded. At the house, Maya was always careful, always professional, always aware of the invisible boundaries that separated employer from employee. Here she was just a sister, just a woman who loved her brother. They walked together to an older Honda Civic parked in the driveway. Marcus jogged back to his Mercedes and followed as they drove to Camelback High School, where the parking lot was already filling with cars and the bright stadium lights cut through the desert twilight. Marcus parked in the back row and made his way to the bleachers, staying in the shadows, anonymous in the crowd of parents and students and local residents who came to watch Friday night soccer. On the field, the teams were warming up. Carlos stood out immediately, his movements fluid despite the slight asymmetry, his skill obvious even in practice drills. Maya sat in the middle section surrounded by other families who clearly knew her. An older woman patted her shoulder. A young couple with a baby waved. This was her community, her world completely separate from the sterile wealth of Paradise Valley. The game started. Marcus found himself leaning forward, transfixed, as Carlos took control of the midfield. The boy was good, not just competent, but genuinely talented. He read the game with intelligence, distributed passes with precision, and when he got the ball in open space, he moved with a grace that seemed impossible for someone with his medical history. 20 minutes in, Carlos collected a pass near midfield, turned past one defender, then another. The crowd rose to their feet. He drove toward the goal, his right leg moving in perfect synchronization with his left, no hesitation, no weakness. The goalkeeper came out to challenge. Carlos touched the ball to his right foot and placed it perfectly into the far corner of the net. The crowd erupted. On the bleachers, Maya was crying and cheering simultaneously, her hands pressed to her mouth, her whole body shaking with pride and joy. Marcus felt something break inside him. This was the miracle Maya had described. This boy who was supposed to be limited, supposed to accept a life of careful management and reduced expectations, was dominating a soccer game against kids who had no physical challenges at all. And Maya had done it. Not doctors, not specialists, not expensive equipment or pharmaceutical interventions. Just a sister who refused to accept what the experts told her was impossible. After the game, which Carlos's team won 3-1, Marcus followed them again. But instead of heading home, Maya drove to a different neighborhood, stopping at a low-slung building with a faded sign that read St. Mary's Community Center. The parking lot held mostly older cars and trucks. The landscaping was minimal. Everything about the place spoke of budget stretched too thin and needs that exceeded resources. Maya and Carlos went inside through a side door. Marcus waited 5 minutes, then approached cautiously. Through a window, he could see into what looked like a large multi-purpose room. What he saw made him stop breathing. Maya stood in the center of the room, surrounded by children. 18, maybe 20 of them, ranging in age from maybe 4 to 12. And every single one of them had some form of physical disability. Wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, leg braces. The equipment Marcus recognized from Tommy's early years, the machinery of limitation and challenge. But these children were not sitting passively. They were moving, exercising, laughing. Maya directed them with the confidence of a trained professional, demonstrating stretches and movements, adjusting their positions, encouraging their efforts. Carlos assisted her, working with the older kids, while Maya focused on the younger ones. On a table along the wall, Marcus saw the homemade equipment. Resistance bands fashioned from old elastic, balance boards constructed from plywood and tennis balls, weights made from plastic bottles filled with sand. Everything improvised, everything created with ingenuity rather than money. And it was working. Marcus watched a little girl, maybe 7 years old, take 5 halting steps between parallel bars made from PVC pipe. Her parents, standing at the far end, dissolved into tears. Maya knelt down and hugged the child, whispering something that made the girl beam with pride. This was what Maya did with her Friday nights. After working all day at the Harrison house, after riding 2 buses across the city, after watching her brother's soccer game, she came here and gave more. She poured out whatever reserves of energy and compassion she had left for children whose families could not afford the kind of care Marcus took for granted. He stood at that window for nearly 2 hours, watching Maya work with a dedication that bordered on obsessive. She never seemed tired, never appeared frustrated when a child struggled. She treated each small victory as momentous, each setback as temporary. Her hands, those calloused brown hands that held such unexpected skill, moved from child to child with practiced precision. At one point, Carlos brought her a bottle of water. She drank it quickly, then immediately returned to a boy of about 10 who was trying to stand from his wheelchair. The attempt failed. The boy's face crumpled. Maya did not offer empty reassurance. Instead, she adjusted his foot position, explained something about weight distribution, and had him try again. This time he made it halfway up before his legs buckled. But Maya celebrated as if he had run a marathon. The boy tried again, and again. On the 5th attempt, he stood fully upright for 3 seconds before sitting back down. The room erupted in applause. Parents wept openly. The boy's face shone with an accomplishment that Marcus recognized from Tommy's own small victories. This was Maya's real work. The Harrison house was just employment. This room, these children, this was her calling. Marcus finally pulled himself away from the window and walked back to his car on unsteady legs. His hands shook as he started the engine. Everything he thought he understood about Maya Torres had been wrong. She was not an ambitious employee trying to ingratiate herself with a wealthy family. She was not overstepping boundaries out of ignorance or carelessness. She was a woman with a gift, using it wherever she could, helping whoever needed it, asking nothing in return. And Marcus had accused her of playing doctor, had questioned her motives, had threatened implicitly, if not explicitly, to take away the one thing that gave Tommy joy. The drive back to Paradise Valley felt like crossing between different planets. From the struggling neighborhoods where people improvised solutions and supported each other through shared hardship, to the gated communities where problems were solved with money and privacy was purchased with tall walls. Marcus pulled into his garage at 11:45. The house was dark except for a light in the master bedroom where Sophia was probably reading. He sat in the car for a long time, engine off, trying to process what he had witnessed. Maya Torres was not just qualified to help Tommy. She might be exactly what his son needed. Not someone who saw him as a patient, a case study, a billable hour, but someone who saw him as Carlos, as all those children at the community center. A person with limitless potential waiting to be unlocked. The question was no longer whether Maya should continue working with Tommy. The question was how Marcus could possibly explain to her that he had been so catastrophically, shamefully wrong. Monday morning, Marcus cancelled his first 3 meetings. He arrived home at 9:15 to find Maya in the kitchen preparing Tommy's snack. She looked up when he entered, and he saw the wariness in her eyes, the careful distance she had put between them since their confrontation. "Maya, I need to talk to you," he said, "about what I saw last week." She stiffened, her hands going still on the cutting board. "Mr. Harrison, I can explain." "You don't need to explain. I already know." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I followed you Friday night. I saw Carlos's soccer game. I saw the community center." The color drained from Maya's face. You followed me. I did. And I owe you an apology. Several apologies. Marcus took a breath. You asked me where I learned the techniques I use with Tommy, but that was not the whole truth, was it? Maya's eyes dropped to the floor. For a long moment she said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I graduated from Arizona State University 3 years ago. Bachelor's degree in physical therapy. I studied on a full academic scholarship while working nights to support myself and Carlos. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. You have a degree in physical therapy? Yes, sir. Then why are you working as a housekeeper? Maya lifted her gaze to meet his, and Marcus saw tears gathering in her dark eyes. Because no one would hire me, Mr. Harrison. I sent out 147 applications, 147 rejections. That's impossible. With your skills, your dedication, with my name, you mean, with my address in South Phoenix, with my degree from a state school instead of somewhere prestigious. Her voice cracked slightly. They have many ways of saying no, Mr. Harrison. Not enough clinical experience, not the right cultural fit. We are looking for candidates with a different profile. Every rejection was polite, every rejection was legal, and every rejection meant the same thing. Marcus felt sick. He knew the system she was describing. He had participated in it, benefited from it, never questioned it. How many Mayas had his own company passed over in favor of candidates with the right connections, the right background, the right appearance? I have $43,000 in student loan debt, Maya continued. Carlos needs new cleats, new school supplies, money for college applications. The community center needs equipment I cannot afford to buy. So yes, I took a job as a housekeeper because I needed the money. And when I saw Tommy, when I saw a boy who reminded me so much of Carlos, I thought maybe I could help. Just quietly. Just between us. I never meant to overstep, Mr. Harrison. I just could not watch him struggle when I knew I could make a difference. The confession hung in the air between them. Marcus thought about the cameras he had installed, the surveillance, the investigation. He had been so focused on protecting his authority, his control, that he had failed to see the simple truth right in front of him. Maya Torres was not a threat to his son. She was his son's best hope. You are overqualified to be a housekeeper, Marcus said slowly. And Tommy needs a physical therapist he trusts. Someone who believes in him without reservation. Maya looked confused. I do not understand, sir. I am offering you a position. Official, legitimate. Private physical therapist for Tommy, working under proper supervision until you complete your licensing requirements. $4,500 a month health insurance and a fund to pay off your student loans. Maya's hand went to her mouth. Mr. Harrison, I cannot. You can. You should. Tommy needs you, Maya. Not as a housekeeper who helps on the side, but as his primary therapist. Marcus paused. I was wrong about you. Completely wrong. And I want the chance to make that right. For a long moment, Maya just stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Then quietly, she asked the question that cut through all the logistics and money. Why now? Why do you want to help me now? Marcus thought about lying, about giving her some professional answer, about recognizing talent and maximizing resources. But she deserved better than that. Because I have been wrong about a lot of things, he said. About you, about Tommy, about what my son really needs. He met her eyes. And because when I watched you at that community center, working with those children after everything else you do, I realized something. You are not trying to take something from my family. You are trying to give Tommy what I have been too proud and too scared to provide myself. Hope. Maya covered her face with her hands and wept. Marcus stood awkwardly, unsure whether to comfort her or give her space, feeling the weight of every assumption he had made, every judgment he had passed. Finally, Maya lowered her hands. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will accept." But even as relief washed through him, even as Marcus began to believe they might actually fix this, his phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was Dr. Patricia Frost. The subject line read, "Formal complaint to Arizona Board of Physical Therapy." Everything was about to get much worse before it got better. Mentally, Part 3. The Transformation. The email from Dr. Patricia Frost was clinical and precise, exactly like the woman herself. 14 paragraphs detailing Maya Torres's unauthorized practice of physical therapy. Attached documentation including dates, times, and what Frost called credible witness testimony. A formal request for investigation and potential disciplinary action. Marcus read it 3 times in his study, while Maya waited downstairs, unaware that the opportunity he had just offered might evaporate before it even began. The irony was not lost on him. He had spent days investigating Maya, questioning her qualifications, doubting her motives. And now when he finally understood the truth, when he was ready to give her the chance she deserved, someone else was threatening to take it all away. He called his attorney Jessica Chen, a woman he had worked with for 12 years, on everything from corporate acquisitions to his personal affairs. She answered on the second ring, despite the early hour. "I need help," Marcus said, "and I need it fast." The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later at the Arizona Board of Physical Therapy offices in downtown Phoenix. Marcus had offered to pay for the best defense attorney in the state, but Maya insisted on using Jessica, someone who understood the full context of the situation. Those 3 weeks felt like 3 years. Tommy had his accident on the second Tuesday. Marcus was in a video conference when he heard Sophia scream, the kind of sound that bypasses all rational thought and triggers pure animal panic. He took the stairs 3 at a time to find his son crumpled at the bottom, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, his small body frighteningly still. Maya was already there, kneeling beside Tommy, with her hands moving in quick, practiced assessment. She checked his pupils, felt along his neck and spine, with careful precision spoke to him in that soft voice that somehow penetrated through pain and fear. "Tommy, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you understand." "Good, good baby. You are going to be okay." She had already called 911 by the time Marcus reached them. She knew exactly what information the paramedics would need. Conscious but disoriented. Pupils equal and reactive. No obvious spinal trauma, but mechanism of injury warrants precaution. She rattled off medical terminology with the ease of a professional, while Sophia stood frozen, her face white with shock. At Phoenix Children's Hospital, the doctors confirmed what Maya had already assessed. Mild concussion, no serious injury. 2 weeks of rest and careful monitoring. "You are very lucky," the attending physician told them. "Whoever provided first response did everything right. Proper stabilization, accurate assessment. Probably prevented a much worse outcome." Marcus looked at Maya, who sat in the corner of the emergency room with her hands folded in her lap, still wearing the fear from those first terrible moments. She had saved his son not once, but twice. First by helping him progress, then by keeping him safe when progress led to overconfidence. Dr. Patricia Frost appeared 30 minutes later, summoned by some hospital notification system. She swept into the room with her usual air of clinical authority, all sharp angles and expensive perfume. "I came as soon as I heard," she said, though her eyes went to Maya with something that looked more like vindication than concern. "This is exactly what happens when unqualified individuals interfere with medical treatment." "Tommy is a 5-year-old boy," Marcus said, his voice harder than he intended. 5-year-old boys fall. It has nothing to do with Maya." "Does it not?" Frost's smile was thin. He was attempting to navigate stairs without assistance because someone gave him false confidence in abilities he has not properly developed. This is what happens when feelings replace professional judgment. Maya stood up, her face pale but determined. Tommy was trying to show independence, That is growth, not recklessness. And if I had not been there to respond appropriately, this conversation might be very different. You were there to respond because you were there to create the problem in the first place, Frost shot back. The board will hear about this incident. You can be certain of that. She left before Marcus could respond, her heels clicking against the hospital linoleum like a countdown to something inevitable. The hearing room was smaller than Marcus expected. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, a long table where 5 board members sat with folders and laptops and expressions of professional neutrality. Dr. Patricia Frost sat on one side with her attorney, a man in an expensive suit who looked like he billed by the minute. Maya Marcus and Jessica Chen sat on the other. The charges were read. Practicing physical therapy without proper licensure and supervision. Providing medical treatment outside the scope of employment. Potential endangerment of a minor. Each accusation felt like a physical blow made worse by the flat bureaucratic language that turned Maya's compassion into something criminal. Dr. Frost testified first. She was articulate and convincing, presenting Maya's actions as a dangerous precedent that threatened public safety. She showed the security footage Marcus had recorded, the images now twisted into evidence of wrongdoing rather than dedication. She described the accident, making it sound like inevitable consequence rather than childhood mishap. Standards exist for a reason, Frost concluded. They protect vulnerable patients from well-meaning but unqualified individuals who do not understand the complexities of proper treatment protocols. Ms. Torres may have had good intentions, but good intentions without proper training and oversight lead to situations exactly like the one we saw with Tommy Harrison. It was a masterful performance. Marcus could see the board members taking notes, their faces grave. Then Jessica Chen began the defense. Ms. Torres does have proper training, Jessica said calmly. She holds a bachelor's degree in physical therapy from Arizona State University. She graduated with honors. Her only crime, if we can call it that, was being unable to find employment in her field despite being eminently qualified. She submitted Maya's transcripts, her clinical evaluations from student internships, letters of recommendation from professors who praised her skill and dedication. The board members leaned forward, interested now. Ms. Torres did not seek out this situation, Jessica continued. She was hired as household staff, but when she saw a child struggling, a child with the same condition her own brother had overcome, she could not stand by and do nothing. She used her knowledge and training earned through years of study and personal experience to help Tommy Harrison achieve progress that months of expensive professional therapy had not provided. Marcus had not planned to testify. Jessica advised against it. Too emotional, she said. Too much potential for saying the wrong thing. But watching Maya sit silently while her character and competence were questioned, he could not stay quiet. "May I speak?" he asked. The board chair, Dr. James Morrison, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, nodded. "Mr. Harrison, you may address the board." Marcus stood, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "My son has cerebral palsy. When he was diagnosed, the doctors gave us statistics and probabilities and careful predictions about his future. They told us what he probably would not achieve, what limitations he would likely face, what we should expect, which was always less than we hoped." He paused, looking at Maya. "For 2 years I paid Dr. Frost $500 an hour to help my son. And he made progress, the kind of incremental improvement that specialists consider success. But he was not happy. He approached therapy like a chore, something to endure rather than embrace. Then Maya came into our home, and everything changed, not because she ignored medical science or rejected professional standards, but because she saw my son as a person first and a patient second. She believed in possibilities rather than limitations. And Tommy responded to that belief in ways no amount of expensive treatment had achieved." Marcus felt his voice catch. "My son laughed during therapy for the first time in 847 days. I had counted them. Every joyless day, every session where he tried so hard to please doctors who only measured him against charts and graphs. Maya gave him back something that had nothing to do with muscle strength or range of motion. She gave him back hope. The room was silent. One of the board members, a younger woman, wiped at her eyes. "You want to punish Maya Torres for practicing without proper supervision?" Marcus continued. "I understand that. Standards matter. Protocols exist for good reasons. But Maya was not some amateur experimenting on my child. She's a trained professional who could not get hired because our system is broken, because she had the wrong name, the wrong address, the wrong connections. And rather than become bitter, rather than give up, she found other ways to use her gifts." He turned to address Dr. Frost directly. "You asked the board to protect vulnerable patients from unqualified individuals. But the vulnerable patient in question is my son. And I am telling you unequivocally that Maya Torres is exactly what Tommy needed. If anyone failed my son, it was me. For not recognizing her value sooner. For almost driving her away because I could not see past my own prejudices." Marcus sat down, his heart pounding. Jessica touched his arm briefly, a gesture of approval. Then Sophia stood up. Marcus looked at her in surprise. This had not been planned. "May I also speak?" she asked. Dr. Morrison nodded, clearly moved by the proceedings. "I am Tommy's mother," Sophia said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I want to show the board something." She opened her laptop and turned it to face the board members. On the screen a video played. Tommy at breakfast, 6 months ago, struggling to hold his spoon, his face tight with concentration and frustration. Then another clip from last week, Tommy eating independently while chatting about his day, his movements fluid and confident. "This is the difference Maya made," Sophia said. "Not just in physical ability, but in self-esteem, in quality of life, in the simple joy of being a child rather than a patient." She clicked to another video. Dozens of people standing in what looked like a community center. Parents holding children with various disabilities. All of them wore homemade signs. "Thank you, Maya. You gave us hope. You changed our lives." "These are families from St. Mary's Community Center," Sophia explained, "where Maya volunteers every Friday night after working all day at our home. After riding 2 buses across the city, after giving everything she has, she gives more. Not for money, not for recognition, because she genuinely cares about helping children who have nowhere else to turn." Sophia's voice strengthened. "You can punish Maya for not following bureaucratic procedures. You can make an example of her to protect your professional standards. But every one of these families will tell you the same thing. Maya Torres is not a threat to anyone. She is a miracle worker who has been systematically denied the chance to work miracles legally." The board members studied the screen, their expressions unreadable. Dr. Frost sat rigid, her attorney whispering something in her ear. Then the doors at the back of the hearing room opened. Carlos Torres walked in, wearing his soccer uniform, moving with that slight asymmetry that told the story of what he had overcome. Behind him came 12 families, parents and children, filling the small room to capacity. Dr. Morrison looked startled. "This is highly irregular." "I apologize, sir," Carlos said. His voice was respectful but firm. "But I needed the board to see what my sister accomplished before you decide her future." He gestured to the families behind him. "We all needed you to see." One by one, parents stepped forward with brief testimonies. Children who had been told they would never walk now running. Kids who faced lives of limitation, now playing sports, riding bikes, living without boundaries. And every single story came back to the same person. Maya Torres, who gave freely what others charged thousands to provide. A mother named Maria Gonzalez spoke through tears. "My daughter Sophia took her first steps last month at St. Mary's Center. She is 7 years old. For 7 years, we saved money we did not have for therapy we could not afford. Miss Maya helped us for free. She stayed late. She brought equipment from her own money. She never gave up on Sophia, even when the doctor said there was no hope." The little girl Sophia stepped forward and walked carefully across the room. 5 steps. 10. 15. She reached Maya and threw her arms around her, and the room erupted in quiet sobs from people who understood what those 15 steps represented. Dr. Morrison called for a recess. The board members filed out to deliberate. Marcus, Sofia, Maya, Carlos, and all the families waited in tense silence. Jessica Chen looked cautiously optimistic, but Marcus knew boards could be unpredictable. Rules and regulations often mattered more than results. 30 minutes later, the board returned. Dr. Morrison's face was grave as he looked at Maya. Ms. Torres, this board takes very seriously the regulations governing the practice of physical therapy in Arizona. Standards exist to protect the public from harm, and we cannot simply ignore violations because of good intentions or positive outcomes. Marcus felt Maya tense beside him. He reached over and took her hand, not caring who saw. However, Dr. Morrison continued, "We also recognize that this case presents unique circumstances. You possess legitimate qualifications and demonstrable skills. Your actions, while technically in violation of supervision requirements, resulted in measurable improvement for patients under your care. And it is clear that systemic barriers prevented you from practicing your profession through traditional channels." He paused, consulting his notes. "Therefore, the board has decided on the following resolution. You will receive an official warning for practicing without proper supervision. You will pay a fine of $1,000, and you will complete 200 hours of supervised clinical practice within the next 6 months under a licensed physical therapist in good standing." Marcus felt the tension drain from Maya's body. It was not a complete vindication, but it was not destruction either. Furthermore, Dr. Morrison said, and now there was something almost like a smile on his face, "I am personally volunteering to provide 50 of those supervision hours. The remaining hours can be split among other board members and community partners who believe, as I do, that our profession needs more people like Maya Torres, not fewer." Dr. Frost stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger. "This is a dangerous precedent. You are essentially rewarding someone for breaking the rules." Dr. Morrison met her gaze steadily. "No, Dr. Frost. We are acknowledging that sometimes our rules create injustices, and we have the wisdom to correct course when presented with evidence of those injustices. Ms. Torres will practice legally and ethically going forward. That was always our goal." The hearing was over. Families crowded around Maya, hugging her, thanking her, crying with relief. Carlos lifted his sister off her feet, spinning her around like she weighed nothing. Jessica Chen shook Marcus's hand, professional satisfaction evident on her face. And Dr. Patricia Frost left without another word, her attorney trailing behind her. Marcus paid Maya's $1,000 fine before they left the building. He also wrote a check to St. Mary's Community Center for $250,000, enough to renovate the space and equip it properly. No more improvised equipment. No more making do with scraps and determination. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Torres Harrison Center for Pediatric Therapy. The name had been Maya's idea, though she had protested at first. But Sophia had insisted, and for once Marcus and his wife were completely aligned. The center occupied a renovated warehouse space in central Phoenix, accessible to families from across the city. It had proper equipment, trained staff, and a sliding scale payment system that meant no child would be turned away for lack of money. Maya served as clinical director, finally practicing her profession legally and openly. Tommy was the guest of honor at the opening, walking across the small stage without crutches to cut the ribbon alongside Maya. The crowd of over 200 people, including families from the old community center and new clients already enrolled, erupted in applause. Marcus watched from the front row, Sophia's hand in his. Somewhere in the past 3 months, in the chaos of preparations and planning and learning how to be present for his son, they had found their way back to each other. Not to the people they had been before Tommy's diagnosis, but to something new and possibly stronger. A partnership built on shared purpose rather than romantic illusion. That evening, after the celebration ended and the crowds dispersed, Marcus found Maya in her new office. She sat at the desk looking slightly overwhelmed by the space and the responsibility and the sudden legitimacy of it all. "You okay?" he asked. Maya looked up and her smile was genuine. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this was all a dream. It is real. You earned this, Maya, all of it." "We earned it," she corrected. "Tommy, you, Sofia, Carlos, all those families. This is what happens when people choose to believe in each other." Marcus nodded. He thought about the man he had been 6 months ago, coming home early to discover his housekeeper doing something unauthorized with his son. That man would have fired her immediately, would have never looked deeper, would have never questioned his own assumptions. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not giving up on Tommy, and for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to." Maya stood and walked around the desk. To Marcus's surprise, she hugged him a brief but genuine embrace. "You learned," she said simply. "That is more than most people do. You saw your mistake and you fixed it. Tommy is lucky to have a father who can admit when he is wrong." 2 years later, Tommy Harrison stood on stage at Horizon Elementary School for Inspiration Day. He was 8 years old now, walking without any assistance, his movements still slightly careful, but confident. His speech was clear and passionate as he told 200 students and parents about limitations and possibilities and the woman who taught him the difference. In the audience, Marcos and Sofia sat with Maya and Carlos. Dr. James Morrison was there too, having become a friend and mentor to Maya. Even Dr. Patricia Frost attended, sitting in the back row. She had reached out to Maya 6 months earlier with a stiff apology and an offer to supervise clinical hours. It was not friendship, not yet, but it was progress. Tommy concluded his speech with words that made Marcus's throat tight. "Miss Maya taught me that being different is not the same as being less, that working harder means you get stronger, that the people who believe in you matter more than the people who doubt you. She came into my life when I needed her most, and she stayed even when it was hard, even when people told her she was wrong, because that is what real heroes do." The applause was thunderous. Tommy beamed, then ran off the stage, still just a little bit awkward, still unmistakably the boy who had overcome so much. He went straight to Maya and hugged her, and she knelt down to return it, whispering something in his ear that made him laugh. Marcus pulled out his phone and took a picture. Not for social media or public consumption, but for himself. A reminder of what could happen when pride gave way to humility, when assumptions were challenged by truth, when a man who thought he had all the answers learned to admit he had been asking the wrong questions. The Torres Harrison Center now had 3 locations across Phoenix. Maya had completed her licensing requirements and was training the next generation of physical therapists, specifically recruiting students from underserved communities who might otherwise face the same barriers she had overcome. Carlos had accepted a full scholarship to Arizona State University, where he would study physical therapy like his sister, hoping to carry forward her legacy. And Tommy, the boy who had brought them all together, continued to exceed every limitation anyone had ever tried to place on him. Because Maya Torres had taught him the most important lesson of all, that miracles do not come from fancy equipment or expensive specialists or prestigious credentials. They come from people who refuse to stop believing, even when belief is the hardest thing in the world. Especially then. The end.